Pranam. Jai Jinendra, everybody. Let's begin with the prayers as usual. Namo Aryantanam, Namo Siddhanam, Namo Ayaryanam, Namo Ujjayanam, Namo Loye Sattva Sahunam. Eso Panchanamukaro Sabba Pava Panasano Manglanancha Sabbesim Padmam Havai Mangalam. Namo Arihantanam, Namo Siddhanam, Namo Ayaryanam, Namo Ujjayanam, Namo Loye Sattva Sahunam. Eso Panchanamukaro Sabba Pava Panasano Manglanancha Sabbesim Padmam Havai Mangalam. Namo Arihantanam, Namo Siddhanam, Namo Ayaryanam, Namo Ujjayanam, Namo Loe Sattva Sahunam. Eso Panchanamukaro Sappa Pava Panasano Manglanancha Sabbesim Padmam Havai Mangalam. Veera Sarasura Surendra Mahito, Virambudha Sansrita, Viranaabhiyata Swakarma Nichayo, Viraya Nityam Nama, Vira Tirthamidam Pravuttamatulam, Virashighoram Tapo, Vire Sri Dhruti Kirtikanti Nichaya, Sri Virabhadram Disa, Kamathe Dharanendra Cha, Sochitam Karma Kurvati, Prabhustulya Manovrutti, Parshanath Sri Estu Vaha. अंगूठे अमृत बसे लपति तना भंडार श्री गुरु गौतम समरिये मनवांछित फलदातार. Welcome everybody. We're moving on in our discussion about the topic of Nav Tatva, the 9 basic elements, which is the basis of understanding Jain Dharma and faith in the Nav Tatva and understanding it, the different aspects of it very clearly takes us further spiritually and helps us move in a more enlightened direction. So for this class, what we are trying to do is learn as much as we can within our capacity about the important aspects of Nav Tatva. Obviously, we won't be going into a huge amount of detail, but what we've discussed so far has been the introduction to Nav Tatva, the various different elements that are included in the Nav Tattvas. And then we started off with further discussion on Jeev. Before we take on the next topic of Jeev, I just want to spend this particular 1 hour with you all to discuss one other aspect of the way the subject matter is divided, and this particular chapter on Nav Tatva in total, not just related to Jeev, is understanding the overall context of Nav Tatva. So let's spend a bit more time on this. Give me 1 second. I'll just put on the slides. The slides are mostly from the previous weeks. There are just 2 additional slides today, and I will take you through those, and then we'll have a lot of time for discussion. Okay. Apologies for that. I'm always challenged by technology. We'll discuss a bit more about how to understand Nav Tattva, and one of the fundamental classifications that are presented to us in the texts are about which out of these 9 tattvas we should know about, which are the ones which we should adopt and incorporate in our lives, which are the ones that we should make all efforts to actually abandon or get rid of, so that the influence of those elements are lessened and ultimately we are free of those. So the whole point, as we discussed right at the beginning, was to understand the nature of reality and our own true self, and ultimately gain the knowledge and the ability to move towards a situation or the reality of our own selves without any dependence on anything, which is moksha. So the knowledge of Nav Tatva is to help us understand who we are, what our relationship to the world is, to the universe is, what our reality has been over time, infinite time in the past, and what it can be in the future if we understand and apply the knowledge of Nav Tattva in our lives. I won't concentrate on each of the slides. You have seen them many times, but at some stage we will review all the slides as well. So we talked about the classification, about what are the qualities of the soul, and the 10 dravya prans, and bhav pran. We also considered the knowledge of paryaptis and ahar, sarir, indriya, swasoswas, pasha, and man, the six paryaptis. And last week we discussed the types of jeeves from different perspectives. And I hope you had a chance to review some of these slides that I had shared. And again, if you have had difficulty understanding some aspects of it because it's in Gujarati, please raise your hand and we can ask a question and we can discuss those. Today, what we are going to try and understand are basic classification with respect to what the soul should know about the 9 tattvas, which of those elements are worth knowing, which of those 9 elements are worth discarding or abandoning and not actually incorporating in our lives, so staying away from those elements, and which are the elements that are important to embrace and accept and implement them in life. Further discussion where there is a bit more to understand and a level of conflict from this particular slide is what is included in Jeev and what is included in Ajeev. So from the classification on the previous slide and this particular slide, there is a slight variation which may make it a bit difficult for people to grasp why a certain element is on this slide as well and not on the other slide. Okay. So, very simply, everything that the knowledge of Nav Tatva describes is worth knowing. So, what do you need to know? What does the soul need to understand? Is what is Jeev and what is Ajeev. So, in the universe, there are only two elements, as we discussed right at the beginning, that which is life and that which is non-life. And we also came to the point where the discussion of this distinction and the difficulty that science is finding in terms of accepting the fact that Jeev or life or sentience is a completely different element from matter. And everything that we learn in science and what science's efforts have been is to explain everything in relation to matter and energy, and all the functions that we see of living beings in the state or the phase that we see them or ourselves are explained in terms of the interaction between chemicals, the inheritance from genes, the processes of what different elements and what different compounds influence the functions of the organism. So from the gross level of the whole body to the molecular level or to the cellular level. And in fact, it goes as far as defining everything with respect to thought, with respect to speech, with respect to action in those terms. But it also tries to describe everything with respect to health and disease, with respect to life and death. And death is defined as the absence of all these functions, but at no point does science accept that there is a separate element that is actually making all this matter, which in itself naturally is not alive. So that separate element is what is the soul or Jeev. And ultimately, because of the reluctance of science to state that, a lot of us have over the years, and a lot of the population throughout the world finds it difficult to accept the traditional wisdom, though Dharma also says that even in the absence of this knowledge from science or this wrong knowledge from science, the soul has always found it difficult to identify itself with its own self. So it has found it always difficult to identify itself with who it is, and is constantly looking at attaching and identifying itself with all the different paryas or elements or different situations or relationships or types as it itself, meaning I am my body, I am connected to my family, so therefore I have my family. So what we constantly say as me and mine is all outside of us. In those in the situation of understanding who we are, our identity is linked to our various forms. So I am a man or I am a woman, I am a child of so and so, I am the father of so and so, I am the husband or the wife of so and so, and it goes on. We identify ourselves with our job, we identify ourselves with our education, we identify ourselves with our wealth, we identify ourselves with our community, and all those identities we hold dear. So our constant engagement with ourselves and with the world is with what is never ours, which has never been ours, which is all temporary for the duration of this life, which will change completely in the next life. So that is one of the fundamental things that we need to understand about Jeev. And so everything with respect to Jeev and Ajeev in the Nav Tattvas is worth knowing. What are the elements that we should actually abandon and discard that are not beneficial to the soul, that hinder the progress of the soul, and that hinders the development of the soul to its ultimate goal, to its ultimate state of moksha? These are pap, ashrav, and bandh. So one should understand those and learn to discard pap, discard ashrav, and discard bandh, or stop engaging in pap, stop engaging in activities that attract karmas to attach to the soul, so that is ashrav, and stop engaging in activities that ultimately leads to the bonding of the karmas to the soul. What are the elements that are important and necessary to embrace and accept and implement that will ensure that the soul's progress does happen? So these are the four elements: punya, samvar, nirjara, and moksha. Punya is that which brings good fortune, and we'll discuss a bit more about why that is included here after we've discussed a bit more in the next slide. Samvar is the state of restricting the entry of karma into the soul. So all those activities that will prevent more karmas being attracted and then ultimately bonding with the soul. Nirjara is the process by which the pre-existing karmas that are attached to the soul will actually be destroyed before, or destroyed by virtue of them being utilized. So if they come to fruition and their energy or their power is spent, and they have given that particular soul all the fruits of that particular karma, so that is called akam nirjara. But the process by which you actually actively make an effort to get rid of the karmas that are attached to the soul, which have not yet come to the state when they will show their effect. So all the existing karmas that are modifiable, all the activities that will help get rid of those karmas is called nirjara. And ultimately, the final stage in the soul's development, when it is completely free of all karma, and therefore it is completely free of any body, mind, and a state where it is in its completely natural, normal state, without any attachment, it has got the full release of all its qualities. The fundamental qualities are total bliss, total knowledge, keval gnan, total darshan, and infinite power. Okay? And in that state, in moksha, it stays permanently. So moksha is a state as well as a place. The place where all souls that go to moksha will stay is above Siddhshila, at the end of the universe, at the end of what is called Lok Akash. We'll come to that in the further discussion when we talk about Ajiv. However, one important aspect of this is to understand that moksha is not just about the place. Moksha is about the state of the soul, which I've just described as completely independent with full exposure of all its virtues. Now, let's come to the next stage. If you look at this slide, what out of the 9 elements is included in a Jeev and which elements are included in a Jeev? So here, what you see is Jeev, Samvar, Nirjara, and Moksha are included in the definition of Jeev. So they are part of that particular element. And in Ajiv, you have Ajiv and Punya as well as Pap, and Ashrav and Bandh. Now, we need to spend a bit more time to understand this. And I think the obvious question comes along that if Punya is good, so if you look at the previous slide, in the last statement, Upadei, necessary to embrace, accept, and implement, Punya is included there. If Punya is included in something that the soul should actually embrace or make an effort to, why is it included here in the same category as Pap, as Ajiv, as Ashrav, and as Bandh? So if we go here, Ashrav, Bandh, and Pap are included in the category of Hey, so necessary to abandon. But Punya is included here as something that is important to embrace. And here, Punya is also included in the Ajiv Tattva, meaning that it is not relevant ultimately and it is not important for the soul. So when the soul is at a state of or progressing towards moksha, along with punya, it has to abandon, along with pap, it has to abandon punya as well. Anybody wants to venture a question on this or some debate? I mean, does this Make sense, you all, or does it raise some questions? I'm sure Bharat Bhai knows all about this, but anybody else?
Ajitbhai, I don't follow some of the definitions like Ashrav and Sunvar.
Okay.
Would you be able to explain what they are, please?
So ashrav is the process, as we talked right at the beginning, by which the soul acquires karma. It is when we discussed what the metaphor of a boat which is taking the soul towards moksha, and that the boat in the ocean has a hole in it. So what happens to that boat is that water starts pouring into the boat, and ultimately it has the effect of sinking the boat. Ashrav is basically leaving the boat in a state where it will collect more and more water. So basically opening up the holes, or opening up all the activities or all the state that will attract karmas, which will then bind with the soul and will be effective in ensuring that the soul's journey from one life to another, and its effects of giving the soul all kinds of different situations of happiness, unhappiness of different bodies will continue. And somewhere is the opposite. So when you plug the boat, you plug the holes that have appeared and stop those activities so that no further water actually enters the boat. So you are lightening the boat so that it can speed up on its journey better. That is somewhere. And nirjara is when you begin to empty the accumulated water in the boat. So you are further lightening the load of karma in the soul. So that is ashrav, samvar, and nirjara.
Thank you.
Okay.
Ajitbhai, you explain pranam, Ajitbhai,
Pranam.
up to Nirjara. So, where does Bandh come in? What is the description for Bandh?
So bandh is when the karma. So for example, if there are activities which actually attract karmas, which more or less for us is every activity that we do, then the karmas come in, and then further activity of putting a value judgment to that. So for example, if I'm eating some food, then I am eating, say, a piece of sweet to sustain my body, and my purpose is twofold. I'm eating because I'm hungry, and I'm eating a sweet because I like the taste. Now, the process of eating is in itself an activity that attracts karma. So if we are looking at karma bandhana karano. So the reasons why karmic particles attached to the soul is one is mithyatva, avirti, kashay, yog, pramad. The four big ones are mithyatva, avirti, kashay, and yog. Yog is all kinds of activities. Kashay is when I'm attaching an element of like and dislike. So as I'm eating this piece of sweet, oh, this is nice, this is good, I like it, I want more of it. So I am making a statement, whether I say it or not, but within my mind, this is nice, this is good. So I am applying rag, I'm applying liking to it, like and dislike, to something that is not mine or something that is not of me. And I am entertaining my sense of taste. My focus is on my sense of taste, my body, neither of which are of me. They are both alien to me as the soul, neither of those are necessary for me. I am in this state because I am now joined with this body. And that is my fundamental fault. But when the soul begins to recognize that, then it says, I am eating to sustain myself. The taste does not matter. Whether I have got food today or I have to fast today because there is no food, then both those states are the same to me because I am not my body. Whether my body sustains or weakens, I am not interested in either of those states because I am not my body. In that state, there is no rag and dvesh. You have control over your experiences with everything else of outside, which is not of you, that you are using. So you got the correct belief. So instead of mithyatva, you got samyaktva. Instead of avirti, you have got control, virti. Instead of kashai, meaning like and dislike, you are neutral, you neither like nor you dislike. And yog, you are actually eating. That is an activity that attracts karma. But because none of those other elements are part of that, then that particular ashrav, that attraction of karma, will not form a solid bond, so that karma will not be bound strongly. So, for example, when a Tirthankar Paramatma achieves Keval and for many years afterwards, they travel from place to place, they continue to function in the physical form, doing everything, they're attracting karmas. But the karma that they're attracting attaches to the soul for a short while and then gets dispersed. They no lasting effect. But when we attract karmas and they bind to the soul, that binding then becomes a state which will ultimately give rise to an effect. So that is the cause. It will rise to an effect sometime in the future. And all those things are determined at the time the karma is attached to the soul. When we were going into more details, which we'll come to.
Yeah.
Bharat Bhai, do you want to add anything to that question from Sudhir Bhai? To the answer?
No, I think you answered it. The only thing is
It's
that he's in answering his question was that Band, Astro occurs initially, and then that converts to bandh when the karma vargana, the karmic particles, convert themselves into karma. That is the
Got it.
bandh.
Yeah,
I mean,
got it. No. I got the
but
fine
you've covered
idea.
everything.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bharatbhai, you want to talk about this distinction that I'm saying is that in the slide, the Jeev, Samvar, Nirjara, and Moksha are included in Jeev. Ajeev, Punya, Pap, Ashrav, and Bandh in Ajeev. But in the previous slide, we are saying that which you need to not embrace is Hey, Pap, Ashrav, and Bandh. But that you need to embrace or implement are Punya, Samvar, Nirjara, and Moksha. So why is Punya included in Ajeev? So that was the question that we want to explore. Anybody wants to expand on that? And Jyoti?
Hi, Pranam Ajitbhai.
Pranam.
Is that because there's still attachment? Because even with your good deeds, you're still attached. And if the soul is complete in itself, then there'd be no desires.
Absolutely. So Punya is useful for the soul's progress, but beyond a certain state or level, even that needs to be discarded because it is still an attachment. And Punya is useful because it is that which determines or gives you the appropriate, suitable circumstances that allow you to progress spiritually. So, for example, all of us here have acquired one of the highest punyas of being born as a human being. That in itself is a rarity. If you look at the state of the soul, it is not often that we get to the stage of being born as a human being. Now, that is considered to be durlabh, and there are examples of how difficult it is, and our Tirthankar Paramatmas have described the extreme rarity of this event for the soul. And there are sort of 10 different ways in which way Manushya Bhav, the birth as a human being, is so difficult. And again, that is another huge lottery that we have won. But not only that, we're born in a community which has given us right from birth the exposure to the background that naturally instills in us the virtues of being non-violent, following a lifestyle that is compassionate and decent, having a very strong core moral value. Now, our punya doesn't end there. So one of the other things that is considered to be very difficult and rare is for us to be born, not just be born in a Jain community, but then have a desire to actually learn more about it. So a lot of us who have entered this phase when we are beginning to get an interest in learning more about our true nature, we come to that. But having an interest, there are lots of people who have an interest. But then not many people make the effort to actually act on that interest and go further and seek out that knowledge. Now, all those who are in this class or those others who attend any kind of spiritual knowledge education or make an effort are in that category, that they have got an interest, they are making an effort to learn, and slowly we can progress on that. So all those things are as a result of punya. If we have acquired great punya, acquired karmas, and we would have acquired those karmas as a result of doing a lot of good. So we'll come to the different ways that punya is acquired when we get to that particular element. We will also come to the ways in which the soul acquires pap and what those activities are. And we will also discuss the distinction and the division between different kinds of punya. So a punya that brings you the necessary circumstances and the material wealth, happiness, etc., but then leads you astray because you get so engrossed in those physical enjoyment and elements that your punya has brought forth for you, that as a result of living that life with all those luxuries that your punya has granted you, you end up forming a lot of pap that then ultimately takes your soul down further. So if that is the state where we are, that our value judgment is telling us that I'm so lucky that all this that I've acquired, all this that, and again, bigger question for us is that we feel that everything that we have acquired is as a result of our efforts. We completely deny, a lot of us, the importance of karma, the punya karma, that has made it possible for us to acquire this. No matter how much effort we put in, if our punya was not with us, none of that effort would have actually brought this state of material happiness to its fruition. And we see a lot of that. So if you look at the variation amongst ourselves as people, some of us inherit great wealth. Some of us work very hard and make great effort and earn a moderate amount. Some of us make very little effort and earn a huge amount of money. For some of us, health is a given, meaning no matter what we eat, drink, do. So as a doctor, I get patients who say, oh, I've smoked all my life and I've still reached 90. So smoking doesn't kill, it doesn't give you cancer. I've had nothing. I'm perfectly okay. And when I try to explain to some patients that, oh, I know somebody who is 95 when he died, and he didn't have heart attacks, he didn't have anything, and he was perfectly okay, and he was smoking 40 a day. So there are that kind of lucky people. So in terms of what punya can give us, our understanding and our acceptance of the value of our effort and all those things, then further determine what kind of karmas we acquire while we are experiencing the effects of this particular karmas. So similar rules apply when we are experiencing the effects of pap. So we'll come to the details of that when we come to punya and pap. Okay. So as Jyotiban has said, the punya along with pap and ashrav and bandh are things that are included in a jiv. They need to be ultimately discarded because they are not part of us. And jiv, samvar, nirjara and moksha. Because samvar and nirjara are also the state of development for the benefit of the soul, they are included in the classification as included in Jeev. So with Jeev is obvious. Samvar and Nirjara are included there because they are ultimately for the emancipation and the benefit of the soul to get it to its natural state of moksha. And punya and pap are both restrictive. So is ashrav and bandh, and they actually hold back the soul. Therefore, they are included in a jiv. So that is the reason why this particular classification is important to remember. Ultimately, the soul's progress depends on the understanding of the vivek with which it understands the true nature of reality. And understanding the Nav Tatva from very different angles and becoming clearer in our minds about how each of them affect us is important for the progress of the soul. And what we need to make efforts to do is to understand these elements, think about them, gradually get our understanding to a level where it is very, very clear. And as we begin to understand these elements and our true nature, then our thoughts will naturally change. Our behavior will naturally change in line with what our understanding is dictating, and that will lead on to the progress of the soul. Okay, that's the only slides that I had to discuss today. And I'm happy for anybody to ask questions, not necessarily related to this slides or today's topic, but it is important for everybody to remember these three words, Hey, Gnei, Upade, what you discard, what you are not beneficial for the soul, what is something that we should all know about, and what is something, Upade, that one should incorporate in life. And understanding the 9 tattvas from that context and retaining that information and slowly making that part of ourselves is what we are trying to do. Okay.
Nav Ajitbhai.
Pranam.
Right. You have said a lot today. I think you explained things so well, because what was going through my mind was, one thing was, am I learning this to be an academic or to be a practitioner? And you've covered that as well, that, how we are going to really understand the soul and where do we go. So yes, I can get the knowledge, but if it's just going to be an academic, then that's not going to help towards my liberation.
Now,
But you've covered that really well.
I'm glad. Is that Hasmukh Bhai?
It is.
Yeah. Okay, Hasmukh Bhai. And I'm glad you raised that, because none of this, what our purpose is to learn for the purpose of making ourselves better. And from where we are, knowing where we are, the next step should be, are we where we need to be? And if we are not, why am I where I am? And is that something, is that state something in which I am happy, or is that my ultimate goal? And then understanding the ultimate goal, what does that actually mean in terms of who I will be in that ultimate state? So understanding the true nature of the soul, and therefore, what do I discard and abandon to get nearer to where I should be? And when I get to that state where I should be, or where I'm moving towards that particular goal, what are the necessary, what are the difficult or different hurdles that come my way? So some of the stories that we have discussed in our previous classes, particularly the aspects of Bhagwan Mahavir's life, where we understood the ups and downs that he went through, and we discussed those in greater detail, they all relate to how the knowledge or lack of knowledge of Nav Tatva actually plays into cause and effect that takes the soul from one place to another. So we talked about the mistake that Bhagwan Mahavir made in the third life as Marichi, and what ultimately happened as a result of that. We also talked about the pride that he exhibited when he learned that his grandfather, that he was going to be the next, he was going to be a Chakravarti, he was going to be a Vasudev, and he was also going to be the last Tirthankar in this Chovisi. And he is so proud and full of glee that my grandfather was the first Tirthankar, my father, the first Chakravarti. I will be a Chakravarti, a Vasudev, and the 24th Tirthankar. So my clan is such a success. And that pride, the result of that pride that he suffers in his last life, the remaining part of that particular karma that he acquired at that time. So we saw all that. And the learning from all these stories is for us to actually understand this, incorporate this, and change. But one thing, now that you brought this up, Hasmukh Bhai, is for us to understand that what we are talking about ultimately is about being. We can use the doing as a means of getting to the state where we need to be. But our progress doesn't end with doing. And that is sometimes the most difficult bit. Because ultimately, if you listen to some very, very accomplished Adhyatmic gurus, they are talking about the state of becoming pure, Suddha. Doing good and being good are two different things. Doing good does not necessarily lead to being good. So doing a lot of good, we could have done for a long, long time. And all the doing good that we do helps us acquire a lot of karmas. But we have gone through these kinds of cycles. So doing good helps us acquire a lot of punya karmas and gives us this kind of stages of development that we can ultimately use to progress spiritually. But the mistake that we've made is that we have considered doing good as the ultimate goal. And we do something good, we feel proud about it, but we ignored that the ultimate goal of the soul is actually being good. That doing alone is not enough if it does not lead to us changing from within and becoming purer and purer. And I think that is a very important understanding that your question, I think it's the right time to actually mention that. So the goal, I mean, we discussed that, and Bharat is familiar, often mentioned that everything in religion is about being good, about being your ultimate self. Doing is important. All good karmas, punya karmas is useful and important. That is why it's included in that category of something that will help you progress. But we should never forget. And our Shastras also say that we have been monks before in many lives. We have progressed to a certain level, but we will come back down. And we've seen that in Bhagwan Mahavir's lives. And I'm sure a lot of us have been monks and have practiced the highest level of penance, the highest level of Nirgranth activity, have followed the 5 Mahavrats. We have probably also been very devout Shravaks in past lives. But all that we have done so far hasn't taken us to moksha yet. And the reason for that is that our concentration has not been on being our natural selves and being our ultimate selves. Okay, I'll stop there.
Ajitbhai, can I just go over something from last week?
Yeah.
You raised, well, we talked about Marudevi Mata's story last week.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you brought that up because I've heard many conflicts, like whenever, on one side, he always says there is no moksha without diksha. You can't go to moksha without diksha. You can only go to diksha in moksha. So I've heard people say, but Marudevi Mata, as a layperson, went to moksha. How was that possible?
Well, she acquired Keval Gnan, and there are other examples of that. However, we must remember, Hasmukh Bhai, that these are mentioned as extremely rare events, that these are mentioned, I mean, that in its Marudevi Mata's Keval Gnan and Moksha was an extreme rarity.
I agree with you. This is what I'm saying, is that where people there was conflict saying that you can get it without Diksha, and my understanding is that without Diksha you can't. So I've actually looked into it, and what I learned, I think you explained last time that straight from Nigod, Marudevi Mata came into a tree, and then the next birth was as Marudevi Mata when she got Keval Gnana and went to moksha.
Yeah.
Right. When I looked into it further, what it said to me, yes, it came from Nigod, that she was born as a leaf on a tree, and the Ayushya was 1,000 years, for 1,000 years. But there was like a cactus tree or a bavarnaja with lots and lots of thorns right next.
Yeah.
So every time the thorns were pricking into the leaf.
Yeah.
So Marudevi Mata observed resilience.
Yeah.
That's for 1,000 years resilience, and not just the resilience, with Khub Shamta.
Yeah.
She did not ever complain. So because of that austerity and that resilience, she got that Keval Gnan.
Yeah.
And the thing is, that's also, again, we were talking about Punya. What it further told me was that in 64 1,000 Pedis, like in her family, nobody's died. Everyone's gone straight to moksha, apart from Marichi. Marichi is the only one that was on the rebound. Everybody else, and so that is all because of the resilience and the punyas. So what I'm saying is that it wasn't. It's quite a, as you said, it's an extreme thing, but it's a really good learning point as well.
Yes. So again, that brings us back to the importance of suffering, resilience, of not complaining, but also focusing on the good. And I'm glad you mentioned this. Bhagwan Rishabdev's once, basically. So from Pedi after Pedi, all the kings were, so the Ikshvaku ones subsequently never died as kings. They all became ascetics, as you said, took Diksha and acquired Keval Gnan, and that whole history. I mean, if you look at Trishasti Shalaka Purush Charitra, which probably describes a lot of this in great detail. So all that is mentioned. But thank you for bringing that up. But I'm glad that you've searched that out. Thank you for enlightening the rest of the class. Thanks.
I should be thanking you because you aroused your curiosity within me.
Yes.
Because the other thing also I'm thinking about is that we always, if we have deadlines and things, we always struggle to meet deadlines and all this. But where we are at the moment, we have this awareness that we are on a deadline as well. We are basically on a time bomb, because if we fail this life, when next?
What next? Absolutely. And I think this is the difficulty, that we get so engrossed with everything else that we do. Efforts to understand the nature of dharma and what we should be doing in life most of the time is lost. And before I end, I know we've got 2014, this is just one particular story that I heard this morning while listening to pravachan by Param Pujya Panyas Labdhi Vallabh Vijayji, and he's one of the greatest Adhyatmic gurus that I've come across. And he's mentioning a very simple story when trying to explain to the audience about the nature of what we desire and what we then not make an effort. And the particular mention that he's made, I've actually forgotten the name of a dish that he's mentioning. But let me quickly recite the story. So the story goes this way, that there was a Seth, a rich person, who was walking from one place to another to go to his village or town. And it was a long walk, it was a long journey, and it was a hot day and he was getting tired. Along the way, he meets a simple villager, a farmer, somebody who is going with his bullock cart, and there is space on the cart itself. And the merchant, the Seth, asks him politely that, will you be kind enough to let me ride on your chariot, on your uh, cart that your bull is pulling or your horse is pulling? And this man says, I have no objection. You can sit on it and relieve your tiredness, and I'll take you to your home. But when we get there, can you give me this particular dish? So he mentions something which I had never heard of, but then he's also explaining it to the audience that it's something that is just some simple gourd or jaggery mixed with some water, and it's a dish made out of that. So to this particular farmer, to this simple man, gourd, that dish was the highest form of food and entertainment that he could have, and he is greatly desirous of that. So the Seth takes him to his home. He treats him as a valued guest, as traditional Atithi Devo Bhava. He uh, gives him water to bathe, clean himself, give him new pairs of clothes that he then wears, and then sits him down at the uh, on an asan to have a meal, and then he is ordered his wife and the cooks to make all different kinds of dishes for this man who had helped him, and he starts bringing him all kinds of different sweets. The Gowal is waiting. He says, I want that particular dish that I really wanted, and he's not interested in anything else. And the Seth is saying he knows what that particular dish is, but he doesn't think that that is of any real value. And but for this Gowal, none of that other things actually matter. All he wants is what he has set his mind to enjoying. And the Seth becomes quite tired of him refusing everything else. And by this time, the Seth is also very hungry, seeing all this food, and he has walked a long way. And he says, until my guest starts eating, I cannot actually sit down and start eating either. So he's getting really desperate. So what he does is picks up a piece of really delicious burfi and jabs it into this Goal's mouth so that he can at least taste something. And as soon as this Goal, this farmer, whoever, eats that, then he forgets his idea of what that other dish was, and he then begins to eat, and everybody is happy. So the point here was that why are you finding it so difficult to accept the sweets that we are actually delivering to you as Guru Maharaj, as Sadhu Bhagwans? He says, we are giving all this to you on a daily basis. So somebody from the audience says, but you're not shoving it down our throat. And he says, yeah, well, we are. We are giving you more and more and more every day, but we can't give it to you because you don't open your mouth. So you are not in an accepting frame of mind. So the point I'm trying to make here is that ultimately we listen to everything, but then to taste the really great taste of what we are being served is to slowly then experience it by incorporating some of that learning within our thinking, within our doing, within our speaking, and changing our lives. That was the point that Param Pujya Panyas Labdhi Vallabh Vijayji Maharaj, the great man that he is, was making. And this was not an old sermon. This was something that he has, second of the three sermons that he has given in Bhivandi just a few days ago. Okay. Thank you for reminding me, for sharing this with you. I think 21, 23. Shall we bring this to an end today, or is there any other questions?
Pranam, Ajitbhai, Ajinendra. I just wanted to add one point, and when the question is raised about Diksha, as whether Diksha is absolutely necessary for one to get Kravagan. Yes, it is. It is absolutely necessary, because that is the right path and the right way to go about getting into the right frame of mind to make your soul nirmal and shuddh. However, in the case of Marudevi Mata and Bharat Chakravarti, those are very, very few exceptions, and we should never bank on anything like that. And our whole aim should be taking Diksha, because that is a right mark, that is the Raj mark. What the others are exceptions to the rule, and that is, you can count them on the tip of your fingers.
Yeah. So,
However, it is not. However, when they have not taken Dravya Diksha, they have got their state of the soul is so pure and so shuddh and so nirmal, that when they go up, when they go into the shapak tenis, they have already got the bhav diksha.
Yeah.
But it is something that is difficult to understand, and the right way is to take diksha. Thank you.
thank you very much for enlarging on that topic. I mean, when Hasmukhbhai mentioned this, I didn't want to get into the details, but I'm glad you made that point, that these are exceptions, that these are not something for us to actually follow and bank on, because we are not Marudeva Mata, we are not Bharat Chakravarti. And if you look at how Bharat Chakravarti lived his life, even as a Chakravarti, then we are nowhere near that. So these are all exceptions. And for us, what Bhagwan and the Dharma is basically preaching and dictating, suggesting to us, is that these are the paths laid out for all of us, and our efforts should be to follow those. And if you look at Bharat Chakravarti, in the background, in the previous lives, and all those who have actually acquired Keval Gnan with little effort, there have been a huge amount of effort in previous lives. So again, the message to take from this is that, oh, somebody did achieve this, so therefore we should follow that mark, and maybe, but we are nowhere near those extremely great people. We are much, much inferior to them. And for us, following what has been advised, and they were, as Bharat Bhai has mentioned, in terms of Bhav Diksha, even though physically they were not Dikshit, they had already surpassed that point in their spiritual self. Sandeep, you asked a question on the chat. Can we take that next time? And just to remind everybody, hold on to that question, Sandeep, write it down, and then let's discuss it. Next week, somebody else will take the class, because I'm away for next Tuesday and the whole of next week. So we'll resume this class in a couple of weeks' time. Okay. So Sandeep Bhai will organize who is coming next week, and we'll let you know. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Ajitbhai. Thank you.
Chinagna Virud Kai Bolio Ho, please be human, Uchin Kai Kari, Tasmichami Dukudam, Sarum. If I've said anything that is against the teachings of our great Tirthankars, our Guru Bhagwans, and our Dharma, then I ask for forgiveness. Saramangala Mangalyam, Sarakalyan Karanam, Pradhanam Saradharmanam, Jainam Jayati Sasanam.
Pranam, Ajitbhai, thank you.
Thank you
Thank you,
all.
Ajitbhai. Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Kushala Ben.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ajitbhai.
Thank you.